Good evening, everybody. Let's start with our motivation. And again, really appreciating having this life and having this opportunity. And remembering all the disadvantages of cyclic existence. And so not getting distracted by meaningless activities. Then let's really plunge ourselves into the Dharma with an enthusiastic motivation to develop bodhicitta, to cultivate the right view, to make our lives ultimately meaningful in order to repay the kindness of all those who have helped us in so many ways in the past, present, and future. So sentient beings and holy beings, to repay their kindness. So this afternoon, somebody from Mandala magazine influenced me about the book that's interviewed me about the book that's coming out, and she mentioned Kyabji Sopa Rinpoche being at Geshe Sopa's Long Life Puja this last weekend, and so she sent me the link to some photos of it. And I've known Geshe Sopa since 1977, right after I became a nun. And I last saw him 2 years ago. And he had stopped teaching maybe about 4 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago. But Jangse Chögyal Rinpoche was taking his place in the summer course. So when I went to see Geshe-la, he hadn't been teaching, and he was in bed, because he just leaning back. He could sit up. He could walk a couple of steps, but that was about it. But I told him what was going on at the Abbey, and his eyes were shining, and he looked at me in a particular way that I will never forget. And that was 2 years ago. And then I looked at the pictures of him from Sunday, and wow, he's really changed in the 2 years. I think he's like around as old as my dad, so 92 or 93. And Venerable Jigme saw him a few months ago and said that he seemed to be in deep meditation. And that's the impression most people have who go to see him. Now he can't really lift his head up. He doesn't speak, and he also doesn't open his eyes. But the whole look on his face or the pallor of his skin, I should say, is one I'm familiar with, my own dad having passed away 4 weeks ago. And so a few thoughts. One, thinking of my dad, thinking of Geshe Sopa and the difference in their lives, even though they were about the same age. And my dad spending a good part of his senior years in front of the television set, and Geshe Zopa spending that same amount of time either reading Pecha or meditating. But then also, contemplating that Geshe Zopa probably won't be with us for so long. And what an incredible teacher he was. Not only in his ability to teach, but just the way he lived was a teaching. Incredibly compassionate. And Lama Zopa says that he's never seen Geshe-la angry. I think one of my friends made him angry once, a couple of my friends. Or maybe he wasn't angry, but he showed displeasure. Yeah. But never outward, the way we get angry. Certainly not. And amazingly humble. And so to think of the fortune of having been able to meet a teacher like that and study with somebody like that, because I studied with him for many years, and then seeing that just because of the body fading, that's it. The years of being able to study with him are older, and now he's teaching us through his life example. So really having that appreciation for being alive, having our own body function properly, so that we can attend teachings, so that we can practice. People like him who can meditate like that when they're that old and the body is that weak are very few. Yeah, even among those who meditate while we're alive and young and healthy, to be able to do it when we're older is quite a challenge. Yeah. And so appreciating our opportunity, trying to make the most of it, and repaying the kindness of sentient beings as well as the kindness of our teachers. Yeah. Because our teachers don't need to teach us. They could be doing a lot of other things besides messing around with disciples like us. And yet, through their kindness and through their faith in the Dharma, they want to pass the teachings on and feel that that's a very strong mission for them, to pass the teachings on, to make sure that the Dharma, the correct Dharma, is alive in the world. So that Geshe-la spent many, many years of his life doing that. At the University of Wisconsin, Wisconsin in Madison for many years. He was a professor, and then, also at Deer Park afterwards, teaching. So, really seeing how the masters value the Dharma and don't take it for granted. And so ourselves having that feeling of seeing the Dharma as something precious, seeing it as special, valuing it, not taking it for granted, and and trying to learn it and put it into practice as much as we can. Knowing that our teachers give us one example of practitioners that I don't know about you, but it would be difficult for me to practice like my teachers do. Yeah, their dedication and single-pointedness in practice is quite amazing. But at least to do our best. Yeah, to make sure the Dharma, exists within us to whatever extent it can, and then to share it with others, because it's something precious that we treasure, and we want others to have that possibility of knowing the teachings and having that same opportunity we've had. Okay, so let us pray for Geshe-la's long life. And he's been here to the Abbey some years ago. So in his next appearance on this earth, may he come here again and stay longer. Yeah, and may you too be awake and be capable of understanding the teachings. You can see, they're so close to the Dharma and so far away from it. When you get born in the lower realms, very difficult. Yeah. Yes, I see your ears are moving, Maitri. Yeah, better to get out of the lower realms. Okay, so now we're going to continue on with this chapter, which, to be honest, I don't understand very well. So, we will fake it until we make it, as they say. Okay, so we've been talking about chapter 11 of Aryadeva's 400 stanzas, that where we're refuting truly existent functioning phenomena, and in particular in this chapter, truly existent time. So time already in the West is something we don't understand very well. Yeah, and then you add the Buddhist perspective and your head starts to spin. Okay, so I think we finished verse 257 last time, right? We're on 258.
256. 256.
256?
I may not have taken any notes at that point.
Yeah. 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 Because my notes were stopped at this point. Okay, so 258, the verse reads, the past and the present are not impermanent. The third, which is different from these, is also not. So you see why I said that my understanding was? Because we've been going through with the past and present are impermanent. Okay? So I think what's happening here is they are refuting the Vaibhasikas and so forth, who, the Vaibhasikas say that the past and the future are substantially existent. In other words, the things are real objects. And then some others who just say that the past and the future are permanent. Okay. So the point is, they are refuting somebody here, because the point is that if here the two times, the past and the present, are substantially established, then their being impermanent is impossible. Okay? So, for the people who are proponents of inherently existing time, the past, you would have to say to them, that the past can't disintegrate, because it's permanent, and if the present were impermanent but existing from its own side, or substantially existent, then it too would have to be permanent. It couldn't be impermanent, because something that is substantially established, is like something that's truly existent in the sense that it doesn't depend on any other factors. So if something doesn't depend on other factors, then it has to be permanent. It can't be a caused phenomena. And since caused phenomena, and functioning thing and impermanent are synonyms, then it also can't be impermanent. Okay? Then when it says the third, which is different from these, is also not, the third refers to the future. So if the past and the present aren't permanent, then also the future can't be permanent. Or put it this way, if the past and present are permanent, then the future must be permanent too. Okay? Yeah.
How do they exist together then?
Pardon?
How do they exist together?
How does what exist together?
The past, the present, and the future, if they are permanent.
Well, that's the point. So that's why we're refuting the people who say that at least the present and that the past and the future are permanent. We're saying there's no way they can be permanent. Yeah.
How do they come with it?
How did they come with that? How did they get that idea? Okay, here I'm just guessing, but my guess is they would say, well, the past is over and done with. It doesn't change, so the past is permanent. The future, hasn't happened, so it's in this limbo state, so it too isn't changing. That's my guess, why they would say that those two times are permanent. Yeah. We say, on the other hand, that all three times are impermanent, because they all arise due to causes, they all produce effects. Okay, so the effect of the future pot, for example, later on is going to be the pot. Yeah, and the effect of the past pot, which is the having ceased pot, is, there we usually talk about actions, the effect of the having ceased action is going to be the result that's experienced later on. Okay, because remember, having ceased and past actions are how the Prasangika talk about how the action or the karma is connected to the result. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Is that true that I can change the past by, see, something happened and I saw whatever the thing happens. Okay, I crashed the car, the guy hit me with the car, he's a jerk, blah, blah, blah. I have my story. Mm-hmm. But then I relook at the story, and then I have new things coming into it. And the guy, he was trying to escape from killing an animal, which I didn't know at the time. Mm-hmm. Is that all changing the past?
No, it's changing your story of the past.
Okay.
Okay? Because our memory of the past and the past are different. Our story about the past and the past are two different things.
Okay.
Yeah. So what happened, but we can see what happened from very different perspectives as we gain different information. Okay.
Change the past, it's just in my mind.
Right.
My mind.
Right. Yeah.
Change.
Okay. But, what happened is, what happened is kind of something that happened, but also it's not separate from our story, too. Because you'll have different people who remember the past and describe it very differently, both of them may be describing it correctly, but they remember different things about the past. Okay? So it's kind of, like all the different people touching the elephant and describing it differently because they're touching different parts of it. Okay? Okay. Then verse 259. The thing which will be produced later, okay, in other words, a future thing, exists beforehand. The contentions of the Niyativadins is not erroneous. I don't really know much about the Niyativadins, to tell you the truth, but they must say something about, things being inherently existent and substantially existent. Okay, so Joe Blow asked the question. He says, future things exist because they arise later when their conditions come together, whereas that which was previously non-existent, like a child of a barren woman, can't be produced later. So that's true. Okay. However, Joe Blow is seeing future things as substantially existent. So that throws a monkey wrench in the whole thing. Okay. So if something that is to be produced later, okay, tomorrow's cake, which is going to be produced tomorrow, we still didn't have last week's cake, did we? Oh, we did. That headache, artery hardening cake.
But the future cake is already made there.
Then it's the present cake.
Well, you're going to have it tomorrow.
Yes, but if it's attained its entity today, then it's a present cake no matter when we eat it. Okay? Yeah, it's a present cake today. Yeah, it'll be a stale cake tomorrow. Yeah, stale cakes are the best for eliminating attachment. Okay, so if something that is to be produced later is substantially existent before it arises, okay, something that's substantially existent, yeah, has attained its own entity, which means it already exists as that thing. So if that were the case, then the contentions of the Niyatavadins would not be erroneous. Okay? Yeah. And those people that say that things are not created by people's activity and are causeless, their assertions would be correct as well if things were substantially existent. Okay? However, these assertions are clearly wrong because they contradict what we see, and we see things being produced by causes. Yeah. Okay. So we see that change with the direct perceiver. So the fact of seeing impermanence means that those things can't be substantially existent.
I was just going to say, in my translation that I have a little side note of that school. And it says that they're propounders of chance who assert that everything exists without a cause.
Okay, so they're like the materialists, the Chakravartins. They say everything exists without a cause. Yeah, that's really, how do people wind up with that kind of philosophy, saying everything exists without a cause? Even if they must say things are like predetermined, but then even predetermined things would have to have a cause, which would be your creator or whatever predetermined them. But to say things are totally causeless, that's really rather silly. I mean, that contradicts evidence. Yeah, because then those people shouldn't eat to satisfy their hunger, because eating would have nothing to do with curing your hunger. Yeah. And they shouldn't walk to get anywhere, because walking would have nothing to do with getting somewhere. I know, rather strange ideas. Yeah?
I was just wondering, since I can see a little bit of my own former perspectives in that, if maybe it could come from like frustration or experiencing an inability to control things. So I want to cause something and it doesn't work out. So then it might be easy to
just say they're causeless. Oh, okay.
You can't see it.
Oh, now that's an interesting view. Like if you want to control things and if you can't and you get frustrated, then one way to deal with it is to just say they don't have any causes. So anything I do is useless. Yeah, because cause and effect doesn't function. That's interesting. I had not thought of that, but yeah, that could be.
Mind that says, it just is what it is.
Yeah.
Like Kevin used to say, this is who I am. You know, that mind that there's nothing causing this.
Yeah.
Makes me think of that. Because I think they have the thing with the thorns.
Yeah. Well, a lot of these people, they will say, you know, that seeds produce sprouts, but some things like the sharpness of the thorn or the complex colors on a peacock's feather are causeless. And they would probably say that because they can't see all the causes, you know? In the same way that we talk about miracles, you know, there's miracles as if miracles were events that had no cause. But I think what we call miracles, it just means that we don't know what all the causes and conditions are. They definitely have causes and conditions. We don't know what they are. So we say they're miraculous, but that's not really correct. Okay. So 260. To say something which will be made to occur already exists is unreasonable. So again, something that will come about in the future, to say that already exists. If that which exists is produced, what has been produced will arise again. Okay, so if the future were substantially existent, okay, then it would be quite unreasonable to say that something that will arise later is substantially existent prior to its production. Okay, because substantially existent things must have attained their own entity, and a future object hasn't attained that. If they were substantially existent, then they've attained their own entity. Then they're present phenomena. They're not future phenomena. Okay? And if you say, if that which has arisen, so this substantially existent future thing, arises later, then it would come into existence again, because it existed when it was a future thing already, and then it would come into existence as the exact same thing again, which is silly, okay, purposeless. And also, how can something that already exists and has already attained its entity be produced again? Once something exists now, that same thing can't arise again. Okay? And either that, or you say, well, the cause still exists. Yeah, the cause didn't go out of it. It had its own entity when it's a future thing. But that cause, you know, that future thing, which is the cause of the present, it still exists. So it, you know, produced the thing again, in which case you have to say the cause and effect exist at the same time. Okay, again, something that is, you know, clearly not reasonable. Okay, so the effect, the pot, okay, which is the effect of the future pot, could never be produced if the future pot already substantially existed. Okay, because it would already exist, so it couldn't be produced. Or it would be produced again, so then you'd have two things that were exactly alike without the cause having ceased in the case, you know? So it's all gets jumbled up.
Three include the past.
Huh?
Actually, three will exist 3 times.
Oh, it could keep on existing innumerable times, because as long as the cause doesn't go out of existence, the thing can continually be produced. Yeah. But that, you know, when you look at it, that's impossible. Once the cause has ceased, you know, something that has ceased doesn't exist again, you know, doesn't still exist. Yeah, and it can't produce that, it can't, you know, the building that burnt down can't be the building you meet in. Okay. Okay, then 261. If future things are seen, why is the non-existent not seen? Okay, for one for whom the future exists, there can be no distant time. Okay, so if future things are seen because they're substantially existent, then you should be able to see non-existent things like the mustache on the turtle, because future substantially existent things and mustaches on turtles are equally non-existent. So if you can see a substantially existent future thing, you should be able to see the child of the barren woman and the mustache on the turtle and the
Horns.
the horns on the rabbit and the flower in the sky and the weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. All those should be visible. Okay. So these kind of fallacies occur for people who say that the future or any of the 3 times exist from their own side, exist by their own nature. Okay, whereas our position is Madhyamaka's, we say that the 3 times exist dependently, and that anything that exists dependently can't exist inherently, because inherent existence is synonymous with independent existence, and dependent existence is contradictory to independent existence. Okay, so that's the whole key, you know, that if things are dependent, they can't be inherent, they can't exist from their own side. They're dependent on in terms of functioning things, they're dependent on causes and conditions. Then all things are dependent on parts. All things exist in relationship, mutual relationship with other things. And all things exist by being merely designated by term and concept. Okay, now,
are we absolutely sure that proponents of the Vaibhashika views and proponents of the Madhyamaka views have the exact same definition of exist?
I mean, exist means something that has its own entity. Right now, it exists. Yeah, they exist on what
They have sort of another meaning for exist. That's not.
No. They exist means, you know, perceivable by a valid cognizer. So, yeah. Okay, now the question in this verse comes up, what about yogic perception that can see the future? Okay, yeah, so somebody's saying, well, are you sure that future things don't substantially exist? Because there's people that see the future. So if people see the future, then the future should have be existing somewhere as some kind of substantial entity, because people can see it. Right? That makes sense, right? We believe that. Wrong. Okay? We believe it and it's wrong. What else is new? Okay. So Buddhas do directly perceive things. They perceive things in the present that will occur in the future, even sometimes eons in the future. Okay? So although they are future things at the time of the mind perceiving them, they are neither non-functioning things, which means they are functioning things, and they're also impermanent, because those future things do not remain for a moment after they arise. So remember, impermanent things don't remain a second moment after they arise. So all those things that the Buddha is seeing in the future are changing moment by moment by moment. Yeah? Not existing in the same way in the very next moment. Okay? But because there's a continuity of a similar type, then our mind thinks, oh, it's substantially existent. In the same way that because there's a continuity of ourselves from moment to moment, we think there's a substantially existent me. Okay? So we are very easily fooled. Yeah, because with our gross senses we can't detect impermanence, and because things that follow in sequence appear, they're in a continuity, they're different moments, but because they look quite similar, then we think they're exactly the same. And they're permanent, and they're substantially existent and inherently existent. They aren't. Okay? Yeah, it's just we're fooled.
But aren't there certain phenomena that can be, in some ways, replicated, that have some kind of permanent quality? For example, like boiling water. 100-degree water in the past is the same as the 100-degree water right now in the future.
Well, see, that's the exact thing. There's a continuity of a similar type. The similar type is boiling water.
Right.
So because there's many moments of boiling water, we think it's permanent. Yeah. If the boiling water were permanent, it should always be boiling even after you turn the heat off.
I guess what I'm saying is like that same boiling water, like even when of course it stops, but when you boil it to 100 degrees, it'll have the same effect.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean it's permanent. Yeah. It's a similar type. The next moment is a similar type, but it's a completely new moment that's produced by different causes. Okay, moment A, the cause of that, the cause of moment 3 of boiling water, the cause of it were moment 1 and moment 2. The effect of it is moment 4 and moment 5. Moment 4 of boiling water, the cause of it is 3, 2, and 1. Okay, so they have different causes, they're different things. And even if you look, boiling water doesn't look the same from one moment to the next. The bubbles here, the bubbles there, and the oxygen, it's the hydrogen and oxygen are floating off into steam, so there's actually less water in the next moment. Okay? So these things are not the same.
Okay.
Okay?
I just found it interesting and helpful to think, just like boiling water, even my body is not the same atoms and everything. Exactly. And we're so fooled thinking our body is exactly the same from one moment to the next. Yeah, when in fact it's different. There's just a continuity of a similar type, but it's different. If the body were the same from moment to moment, we would never age. Yeah? But you can't make something that
that is impermanent by nature into something permanent. Anyway, would you want to have a permanent body? Yeah? Then you'd have to have a permanent mind. Everything around you would be totally frozen. You couldn't think because thinking involves change. You couldn't perceive anything except that present moment because to perceive something new involves change. Yeah, everything would just be totally frozen. Nothing could happen. Okay. Okay, so I'm not going to go into that part. Okay, so the omniscient mind directly cognizes all three times simultaneously. The Buddha knows the past, present, and future simultaneously. Okay, but that doesn't mean that the past, present, and future exist at the same time. So it doesn't mean that that future thing exists now and is going to remain permanently the same until somehow we catch up with the future and it becomes present. Okay? So I think what's actually happening is the Buddha is seeing the causes, because the future thing is something that has not yet arisen, but whose causes exist. Yeah. So by seeing the present causes, then the Buddha, we would say infers the future, but that's because we're beings that deal with inference and concept, whereas the Buddha sees things directly. So I think this is what catches us, is we think if you have direct perception, then it must already have attained its entity, and it must be substantially existent, and it must exist now. But that's not the case. Okay? So a future thing does not exist now. Yeah? And it's not substantially existent. Hold on a second, okay? Yeah? So the seed and the future sprout exist at the same time. But the future sprout does not exist now.
How to imagine that? To be able to see everything at the same time, like the seed and the tree.
Yeah. Well, okay, so that gets into the question of how the Buddha can see everything. Okay, His Holiness has a beautiful explanation for this. He says, the nature of the mind is clear and knowing. So the very nature of the mind is capable of reflecting and engaging and perceiving everything. Why doesn't it perceive everything now? Because there's things that get in the way. So, for example, the wall gets in the way of our seeing what's behind the wall. There's some blockage to our seeing behind there. Similarly, on the mental side, our minds are obscured by afflictions, by polluted karma, by wrong views. So all these things obscure the nature of the mind. So even though the nature of the mind has the ability to perceive things, it can't because it's covered by all this garbage. Once that garbage is eliminated, once all the afflictive obscurations and cognitive obscurations have been eliminated, then very naturally, the mind can perceive everything. Yeah? Because that's the nature of the mind. Okay. So even though the past and the future don't exist now, they are in general directly perceived. Okay? So similarly, although objects of aspiration, what we want to become in the future, our future Buddha or whatever, doesn't exist now, those things clearly appear to the yogic direct perception, that can see these things accurately. Okay? So though the seed exists, the sprout that hasn't yet come into existence can be called future. It's the future sprout. But the sprout that exists now cannot be called the future. Okay? So the sprout and the future sprout are not the same. So the Buddha seeing the present causes doesn't mean that substantially existent things in the future exist. Yeah. So it's not, like, okay, the Buddha I'm going to become is kind of hanging out somewhere in the universe, waiting for me to become that Buddha. Yeah. Because if the Buddha I were to become were already there, then it would be present, already having attained its own entity. Yeah. And it's not existing in some kind of time warp, waiting for the clock to tick and me to catch up and then become it. But it already exists. Okay. That doesn't work. Yeah.
Doesn't it follow then that if a Buddha sees the future, but not through inference, that's how not through inferring?
No. Because inferring is a conceptual mind, and Buddhists don't have concepts.
Doesn't it follow then that a Buddha sees non-existent things?
How could a Buddha see non-existent things? Things that don't... The future objects do exist. They don't exist now. Okay, tomorrow exists, but tomorrow does not exist today. Okay, so future things exist, but they don't exist now. Okay? Yeah. See, I told you it's a difficult topic. When does the future exist? In the future. What?
You said the Buddha was seeing the future. Is he seeing things that could happen or will happen?
I'm not sure. Okay? Because the Buddha sees the causes of something. But if those causes change, then the result's going to change. On the other hand, if you say the Buddha's omniscient, then shouldn't the Buddha see the changing causes? Okay. But they say that just because the Buddha sees the future does not mean the future is predetermined. It just means that the Buddha is seeing all the complexity of causes that is going to lead to it. But we still have the choice, to choose what we want.
Because we don't.
Yeah.
It seems like when I think about this, my mind tries to stop so that I can see it. But that's not what ever happens. So the Buddha has the kind of mind to see all the things as they
flow, as they continue to change, as they don't exist in the very next moment, as this whole complex thing of causes and conditions, which is amazingly complex. How things kind of come together and produce things. Yeah. I mean, I always think of this in terms of scientific studies, No scientific study has been able to prove, if this happens 100% of the time. Why? Because there's all sorts of subtle causes and conditions that they aren't aware of that sneak in and influence the experiment. Yeah. So all you can say is like,
Probabilities.
yeah. Yeah. Otherwise, everybody who took a certain medicine should always be cured by that medicine. And that's not what happens. Cause and effect is so complicated.
This is the mind, or cause and effect is something different from the mind.
Yeah. Well, whether we're talking about physical cause and effect or mental cause and effect, it's equally complex. Yeah. It's the whole idea of, just this, so many different things influencing each other.
But the mind creates that, or?
No, the mind also has many causes and conditions. Each moment of mind, comes about due to many, many causes and conditions.
So what's create the cause and effect then?
The previous causes. And it all goes back and it's beginningless. Yeah, remember? We went through this. Can't be an initial cause. Yeah. Impossible for initial causes to exist. Yeah. What's wrong with things being infinite,
The third time, ar vacío.
Our
Vacío.
Empty.
empty, yes. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Right. Yeah. They don't have their inherent nature. Whereas, if the future thing, you could see it exactly what it was, look at so-and-so's future Buddha, it's appearing as, this Buddha that's green and is holding blah, 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 then it couldn't be empty. Yeah. It would be a self-existent Buddha. Yeah. Which doesn't make any sense. Yeah.
Isn't one of the things we chant at lunch, isn't there like a line that in a future time or in the celestial mansion there's a pure form of your body?
Yeah, what do you see?
One of the chants we do at lunch.
Yeah.
Is there like a verse that says in the celestial mansion there's like a pure
Yeah.
form of your...
Right. Yeah, but that's in your meditation.
That's what they're talking about.
Yeah.
So how does karma fit into this? Because
That's it.
karma is about
Cause and effect.
Cause and effect having a permanent relationship, though.
Nothing's permanent.
Well, but if you do these causes, it will result in these effects.
Yeah, but it's not a one-to-one thing. It's not like, okay, you deliberately squish this ant and then 15 lifetimes from now, exactly on July 24th, you're going to be an ant and you're going to be squished. No. Okay? Sometimes they explain karma in very simplistic ways to people, just so that people get the idea that if you kill, you're going to be killed. If you steal, you're going to lose your things. But actually, things are very, very complicated, and exactly how, one particular action ripens, they say only the Buddha can know that, because there are so many different factors going into into seeing the result of just one action, because it's interrelated with so many other actions, so many other things in the environment. Yeah, it's really beyond our comprehension to know all these things. But beyond our comprehension does not mean they're permanent. Does not mean they're causeless. Does not mean that they already exist somewhere. Does not mean they're predetermined. Okay? So, in this whole discussion, it's so interesting. We can see our clinging, our so desperately wanting to have truly existent things. Yeah? How our mind wants to make everything solid in some way. Yeah? And this nature, this idea that things are not solid, that you have all these causes and conditions that come together for one moment that doesn't remain in the next moment, you know, that all these things are kind of, you know, like illusions or bubbles or, you know, a star, mirage, a flame of a lamp, an illusion, a drop of dew, a bubble, you know, that these things are coming and disappearing and don't have their own essence that goes from one moment to the next. You know, our mind just like can't handle it. Yeah. And we go, no. Let's come back. This is, well, what is this?
A striker.
Okay, a striker. This is a striker. It's only a striker, always a striker, always has been a striker. Right? It's permanent.
Well, I think the tree might object to that.
Yeah, exactly. The tree is going to go, no, this was part of me.
Exactly.
Yeah?
And I'm permanent because I'm a tree.
Yeah. I mean, so you see, you can really see here how our mind just grasps. Yeah? So this is very helpful to see. Very helpful to see. You know? Because this is the cause of our dukkha. Okay. Okay, so 262. If virtue exists, though nothing is done, resolute restraint is meaningless. If even a little is done, the effect cannot exist. Okay, so if the future exists substantially, the future, okay, my next life exists substantially, then there's no reason for me in this life to restrain myself from committing non-virtuous actions. Because my future life is...
Virtue's already there.
It's already there. My future life is already, you know, concrete, substantially existent. So anything I do this life won't bring any change. This is kind of what you were saying, It won't bring any change. So then, why should I keep good ethical conduct? Why should I observe precepts? Because the future is substantially existent. Anything I do now won't make any difference. Okay? So that's also kind of ridiculous, isn't it? It's like, let's say you're taking a college course. If your future grade is substantially existent, it's a future substantially existent grade, then you don't need to read the text, you don't need to study, you don't need to do anything. And this is why some people you know?
Existing failing grade.
But they don't get the A that they thought they concretely deserved. You know, they get the D or the F. Okay, so if, because the future substantially exists, virtue exists without keeping ethical conduct, you know, after you meet a teacher and listen to teachings and so on, then then keeping ethical conduct for the sake of having certain future results is purposeless. Might as well go lie on the beach all day. Okay, that's because the virtue will exist even if keeping precepts hasn't been done, or even if restraint from negative action hasn't been done. Even if a little is done to increase one's capability, like I'll do a little virtue, still the future results can't be substantially existent. Because again, if they are, then, they're here now. Okay, so if the future already existed as a truly existent future, there would be no need for it to arise because it's already there. It would be already happening. Okay? Thus, if your future precepts are already truly existent, why bother to make any effort to take them? Okay, so let's say you have the aspiration to take precepts. If those future precepts you're going to take already truly exist, then you don't need to take them. Yeah. Okay. If the results of your present keeping of precepts were truly existent, there would be no need to keep them because future results would already be there. Okay. So we keep coming again and again and again to the same point here. Yeah. That if things have their own nature, that is independent of causes and conditions, yeah, then they can't exist. Yeah, be they past, present, or future. Yeah, because all these things exist by the coming and going of all these complicated causes and conditions. And none of them exist for a second moment. And in this changing from one moment to moment, like the clock changing from one moment to moment, there isn't something that really is a clock that kind of goes along with this change. You know, it's like, okay, all the electrons are moving and changing moment by moment. But there's something that's really the essence of the clock, that it's always there moment by moment. No, that also can't exist. Yeah. Some kind of permanent essence that doesn't change from moment to moment, even though the whole rest of the object is changing. How is that going to happen? Then you have to have a permanent essence that doesn't relate to the whole basis of designation, the whole rest of the phenomena upon which it is based. Yeah. Again, that can't be. Okay? Sufficiently confused? Yes.
How do Vaibhashikas view ethical conduct?
Oh, they say, Vaibhasikas say ethical conduct is imperative. They're Buddhists. Yes, by all means you have to, take and keep precepts.
How do they justify that then?
Ask a Vaibhasika. because in their mind, they don't think like these arguments are saying. They think, oh yes, things are dependent arising. Keeping precepts now leads to a good verse in the good rebirth in the future. Yes, things are dependent arising. But what they don't realize is that if it's dependent arising, it can't be truly existent. They think that if it's dependent arising, it must be truly existent, because if it wasn't, then it wouldn't exist at all. Yeah? So that's the thing with all the Buddhist schools that assert true or inherent existence. They all say, yes, things arise dependently. Yeah? But they have to have their own essence, otherwise they wouldn't exist at all. Otherwise you could call anything by any name, and anything could function in any way, and there would be total and complete chaos. Yamakas say the exact opposite. They say, because things are dependent arising, they are empty of true existence, and therefore cause and effect function, and things can arise and exist and change, and karma works. So it's quite interesting because, one party uses dependent arising as a reason to prove true existence, which is a wrong reason. It doesn't prove that. And the other, the Madhyamakas use dependent arising as the reason to prove emptiness. Yeah. So here's where you really see the difference between the lower schools and the Madhyamakas and the Prasangikas in particular. Yeah.
How does non-revelatory form fits into that concept?
Oh, the same thing with non-revelatory form. It's impermanent.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Changing moment by moment. Yeah.
I meant to ask this, I think, last time, but when I was talking with the Geshe-la I go to, we got in a big wrap my brain around space. And I think his ultimate was permanent space.
There's two kinds of space. One is permanent, one's impermanent.
Oh, okay. So then I was wondering, okay, so if you don't, this kind of then I think ties into the little I know of physics and like space-time. If you don't delineate past, present, and future, could you just say time itself could be like permanent?
No.
So you couldn't have like just time.
No.
There's always
No, because you label time in dependence on past, present, and future. How can the basis of designation be changing and the thing that you label be permanent?
Okay.
That's the same thing I was just saying, you know? Like, all the things here are changing, but there's something that is the clock that doesn't change, that goes from moment to moment. And that's the whole idea behind an Atman. Our body and mind are constantly changing, but there's something that is some essence that is not the body, not the mind, that is permanent, that goes from moment to moment. Yeah. And that's kind of what that's the fundamental thing that the Buddhists refute. Okay. But the way we usually speak of space, permanent space, the definition is the lack of obstructability and tangibility. It's the lack of that. So it's not a positive phenomena.
Okay.
It's not here is space. It's the lack of tangibility and obstructibility that allow things to exist in a place.
Okay, that's good. Thanks.
Okay.
Well, this discussion reminds me of how when I first met the Dharma and I found out that there were suttas predicting that the Buddha Dharma would decline. I was so shocked. Like, what do you mean it's going to disintegrate? And my teacher had to explain, that's why we have to keep creating the causes for the Buddha Dharma to flourish and keep eating it. And I realized that's one big difference between Buddhism and other faiths, I guess, where the future is guaranteed. By faith in Christ I'm saved, my place in heaven is secured. And just the Buddhist approach of cause and effect seems to make so much sense,
Yeah.
and to fire up your practice.
Yeah, that things do not arise due to one cause. Yeah, and they don't arise due to permanent causes, and they don't arise due to no cause, and they don't arise due to a discordant cause. Yeah, so to really think about this. Yeah.
But if they say that it will decline, whatever we do, it will decline.
Yeah, it changes. It changes and goes out of existence.
The Dharma.
Oh, the Dharma.
They say that the Dharma will decline, so it will decline whatever we do.
Because
That's
no.
like this paragraph that we just did.
Yeah. No, that's why we keep creating the causes for the Dharma to exist. Yeah. If we don't create the causes, then, the Dharma is not destroyed by something outside. It's destroyed by Buddhists who don't practice well. Okay. And in actual fact, the Dharma itself can never be destroyed. Yeah. But that doesn't mean it's permanent. Although true cessations are permanent, but true paths aren't.
It's actually would have. Once somebody told me that also in the Sutra was saying that in future the robes will not exist anymore.
The what won't
The robes, the monastics identify only with a scarf or something. And then I had a moment in my mind and I said, then maybe you can get disappointed, or maybe you don't see a meaning of doing that anymore because you know already it will not stay for long or whatever. So kind of.
That His Holiness always says you don't know the future until it happens.
Unless you're a Buddha.
And even then it might change.
And even then it might change. This will be the last question.
Oh, it's not a question. I just wanted to comment that what you said about cause and effect will help. In other phases, you just find a misunderstanding how cause and effect relate to each other. Just remember how the whole Catholic Church during the Reformation, you were selling dispensations and if you do this, you will get out of purgatory, so you pay this much to get out of that.
Discordant causes.
Discordant causes.
4 easy payments of $49.99.
But sometimes, sorry to say, Buddhists have that same attitude. I'm going to make an offering and pray to the Buddha that such and such happens. Or the people who are business people, they say, if such and such happens, then I'll make an offering. You're doing business with the Buddha. As if Buddha could control our karma. Buddha could control our karma. He already would have. We'd already be fully enlightened if the Buddha could control all those things. But we're the ones who create our own karma.